Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the heart of ancient Persia, a place where the sun blazes, the sand burns, and the idea of a cool beverage seems as likely as finding a penguin in the marketplace. You're standing in a land where summer heat can dry figs on the branch, and where your sandals might stick to stone from sheer solar spite. And yet, you lift a delicate clay cup to your lips, and it's cold. Cold. Inside that cup is wine, spiced and fragrant, chilled to a perfect temperature as if served from a modern fridge. Welcome to one of history's most quietly brilliant feats, how ancient Persians, thousands of years ago, managed to chill wine using mountain snow, wind-catching domes. And a whole lot of patience. Now, you probably won't survive this desert in sandals and a graphic tee. Trust me, your smartwatch has no idea what to do with a yakshal. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it in your corner of the world? Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking across a dry plateau, dust swirling around your ankles, and the air smells faintly of rosemary and sun-baked stone. You're not here as a conqueror or a historian. You're just a curious traveler with a soft spot for odd inventions and a thirst for something surprisingly refreshing. In the distance, the outline of Persepolis shimmers in the heat. It's not just a city, it's a statement. Stone columns like frozen fireworks rise against the sky, and somewhere inside, someone is preparing a wine goblet for a king. Of course, you're not royalty. But the servant doesn't know that. He nods respectfully and gestures you past towering bas-reliefs of winged bulls and dignified beards. You go down into a cooler corridor where your footsteps echo and where the air suddenly shifts. You feel it, don't you? The temperature drops. Just slightly. Enough for goosebumps to rise on your suntanned arms. You step into what could only be called a wine library. Clay amphorae line the walls like well-fed soldiers at rest. And beside them, unmistakably, large ceramic urns filled with ice. Snow, technically, packed and wrapped in layers of straw. The wine amphorae rest nearby, their bases nestled in cooling channels carved into the floor. Here's where it gets ridiculous. This isn't a royal gimmick or a showpiece. This is engineering. Sophisticated, climate-savvy, mind-bendingly low-tech engineering. Historians still argue whether these storage methods were uniquely Persian or borrowed from older Mesopotamian tricks. But one thing is certain, the Achaemenid Empire around the 5th century BCE didn't just rule through armies. They ruled through cleverness. Through cool-headedness. Literally, and this wine. It's not the sweet red you swig at a wedding. It's mulled with cinnamon, clove, cardamom. Aged with raisins and occasionally even saffron. A recipe that smells like a bakery and a spice market had a very sophisticated baby. It's thick, luxurious, and somehow chilled. You take a sip and blink. It's like drinking velvet that took a detour through a snowdrift. Now, imagine the logistics. You don't just store snow in a desert. It has to be collected, preserved, and protected like treasure. That story begins not here in the cool underbelly of Persepolis, but high above in the craggy ribs of the Zagros Mountains, where snow is born. But not so fast. Stay in this cellar for a moment. Run your fingers over the inscriptions etched into the clay vessels. Some mark vintage years. Others name noble houses. A few have tiny sketches, a leopard, a phoenix, an improbable flying fish. Perhaps the winemakers were bored. Or ambitious. Or just wanted to prank future historians. On one wall, a bas-relief shows men carrying baskets on their backs. But these aren't grapes. They're angular. Ice blocks, maybe. Snow wrapped in some kind of cloth. Could be goat wool. Could be linen soaked in vinegar to repel heat. One man stumbles. Another laughs. There's humor even in ancient logistics, and this brings us to your favorite question: why? Why go through all this trouble for cold wine? Well, partly for the same reasons you add ice cubes to your soda. It feels better. It tastes cleaner. And most importantly, it impresses guests. A chilled drink in the dead of Persian summer isn't just hospitality. It's wizardry. Historians agree this was a status move. Chilled wine separated kings from commoners, generals from foot soldiers. But here's the twist. It also served a spiritual purpose. Zoroastrian beliefs, which shaped much of Persian culture, emphasized purity, balance, and opposing forces, fire and water, heat and cold. Offering a chilled beverage in that context might have been more than a flex. It could have been a symbolic gesture, a microcosm of harmony. Still, historians debate whether the chilled wine was widely consumed or reserved for ceremonies. Some say only nobles got the real snow-chilled version. Others suggest even urban elites had access through communal yakshals. But we'll get to those icy domes later. For now, let's keep the setting simple: you, a clay cup, and the distant hum of a summer city that somehow forgot to be hot, if only for a sip. Above your head, torches flicker. Their flames reach up as if trying to escape the cool. Your body begins to relax, lulled by the contrast. The heat you came from, the chill you feel now. The wine nestles in your belly like a sleeping cat. Satisfied. Curious. Still thirsty for more story, you lean back against a carved pillar, eyes half-lidded. Tomorrow, maybe you'll try climbing those snow-covered peaks. But for now, let's just sit here. Cold drink in hand, history in the air, and a quiet appreciation for the miracle of cool wine in an unforgiving world. You've barely blinked when someone clears their throat behind you. A young servant, cheeks flushed and tunic damp with sweat, gestures politely toward a long corridor. The royal cellars of Persepolis, it seems, are only half the story. Deeper still, behind layers of stone, down curving ramps and narrow tunnels, you follow the faint smell of damp clay and sweet wine to where the true treasures are kept. This isn't your average wine closet. These vaults are a network, a labyrinth under the palace foundations. You duck under low ceilings. The torches lining the walls flicker with every breath of wind from cleverly concealed vents above. The air grows cooler with each step. The silence here isn't just peaceful. It's purposeful. Sound seems to thicken in the cold. Your own footsteps echo like distant drums. A scholar might call this the beginning of a cold chain supply system. A sommelier might call it divine. You just call it finally, pleasantly chilly. The royal cellars were more than storage. They were a machine, tuned to the rhythm of the empire. Slaves and servants moved through them like blood through veins. Each carried instructions, or jugs, or blocks of snow wrapped in straw. The great wine jars were nested in square pits carved into the bedrock, lined with smooth river stones to catch condensation and drain it away. Clever. Silent. Chilly. What you notice most, though, is the care. These amphorae aren't slapped together. Each one is labeled in cuneiform or Old Persian script. Some are marked in ink. Others are etched directly into the clay. Shiraz, mid-harvest, aged with pomegranate peel. For banquet use only. Cool before serving. And your favorite so far, do not touch. Belongs to the Queen Mother. One amphora is missing its lid. Inside is a pale liquid with a strange shimmer, like moonlight in motion. You lean in and catch a whiff: honey, thyme, smoke. You're tempted to taste but don't. Probably wise. The last thing you need is a 2,500-year-old hangover. Historians still argue whether these vaults were used year-round or only during ceremonial months. Some believe the wine was stored at ambient temperature most of the year and only chilled during festivals. Others point to the elaborate ventilation system as proof that maintaining a cool climate was a priority all year. Another theory suggests these weren't wine cellars at all. They may have been part of a broader temple system honoring the duality of elements, fire and ice, sun and snow, life and fermentation. You find a smooth bench carved directly from the wall. You sit. In the faint torchlight, you imagine the hum of activity around you centuries ago. The clink of jars. The slap of sandals. The occasional spilled goblet met with royal sighs. You picture a wine steward with the stress level of a modern-day event planner, fanning himself with palm leaves and barking orders at teenage assistants. Some things, you suspect, haven't changed much. Then, from across the cellar, you hear it, the rumble of a heavy stone door rolling open. Two workers enter, carrying what look like large leather sacks. Their breath hisses from exertion. The sacks are dripping slightly. You follow the trail to a central chamber, darker than the others. There, you find something unexpected. A shallow pool, more rectangular than circular, is ringed with curved steps leading downward. The water is still and reflective. At its center float skins of snow. Not ice cubes. Not crushed flakes. Actual compacted snow, folded inside goatskin and tied with twine. You dip a finger into the water. Cold. Bracing. And oddly, holy. Yes, holy. This chamber doesn't feel merely utilitarian. It feels ceremonial. There's incense burned into the walls. Gold leaf is embedded between bricks. Tiny alcoves are carved for what you assume were once votive offerings. Perhaps this wasn't just a storage pool. Perhaps it was a place of gratitude, a place to honor the snow. There's something strangely moving about it. The way these ancient people revered a fleeting thing like snow. They dragged it from mountains and carried it for days, just to cool a drink or honor a god. It makes you think of popsicles melting on a summer sidewalk. Of ice cubes clinking in a glass by a pool. Of how the most ephemeral comforts are often the most carefully preserved. You lean against the cold wall. You breathe in the mineral-sweet air and imagine, just for a moment, that you live here. That you're the steward in charge of wine and snow. Your days are spent balancing logistics and weather forecasts. Your nights are filled with scrolls of harvest dates and frost patterns. It's not glamorous, but it's important. Someone has to keep the cups cold, even the king must wait for his wine, and now you begin to wonder, where did all this snow come from? Who went up those brutal mountains? Who risked wolves and frostbite to bring back the chill? The story isn't complete until you follow the path upward, toward the Zagros, where the snow waits in silence for its royal journey. But you're not quite ready to climb yet. Not until you've finished this second cup. The servant returns, eyes wide. He gestures politely, one hand open and the other over his chest. Apparently, you've stayed too long or seen too much. Either way, you rise and follow him back through the twisting halls. The temperature rises with each turn. By the time you reach the surface, you're sweating again. The cold is already a memory, but you carry it with you, that taste. That stillness. That perfect, quiet miracle of cold wine in a world made of heat. You leave the dimness of the cellars behind, blinking against the sunlight like a mole evicted from its burrow. The heat hits you hard, instant sweat, gritty air, the perfume of sun-baked sandstone. But you're not heading back to the market or the palace garden. Today, your path takes you up. Far up, the Zagros Mountains stand in the distance, hazy and pale like an old watercolor. But don't be fooled by their softness. These peaks are serious, craggy, wind-scoured, and dramatic enough to intimidate even the hardiest of goats. And you're climbing. Sort of. There's a donkey, and a grumpy one at that. You name him Coolidge because why not? The higher you go, the cooler it becomes. The path narrows. Wind sharpens. The greenery fades into alpine brush. You spot a few tough little flowers blooming defiantly in the dust, like they're flipping off the sun. It's not long before you reach snow, real snow, fresh and crunching underfoot, glinting like powdered quartz in the slanted afternoon light, and here, perched like a stubborn secret, is the snow harvesting camp. A semicircle of canvas tents. Men wrapped in layers of wool and worn linen. Goats huddled near a fire. The smell is equal parts wet fur and old leather. You're not greeted like a guest. You're regarded like a raccoon that wandered into a chess tournament. Still, a younger snow harvester offers you a bowl of warm barley stew. Hospitality is universal, even at 9,000 feet. Historians still argue whether these harvests were strictly royal expeditions or whether regional cities commissioned their own teams. There's even some speculation that rival noble families raced to see who could bring snow down first each spring, like a high-stakes version of your neighbor bragging about who got the first watermelon of the season. You watch as the snow harvest begins. It's a slow, meticulous process. The workers cut slabs of dense, compacted snow, often from shaded crevices or areas piled up by avalanches, and wrap them tightly in thick cloth. Then comes the clever part, layering. First, a bed of straw. Then snow. Then more straw. Like an ice sandwich made for the gods, each wrapped bundle is lashed tightly and packed into leather satchels. The satchels are surprisingly elegant, dyed with plant pigments and stitched with care. One has a painted inscription that reads something like "Handle with all." You like that. You feel it too, and now comes the most delicate stage, timing. These bundles can't wait. The sun is relentless. Even high in the mountains, a late start could mean slush instead of treasure. So as soon as enough snow is bundled, the caravan begins its descent. You decide to follow. You and Coolidge join the back of the group. Behind you, the snow camp disappears into mist. Before you, an empire waits to taste the cold. The journey down is no joke. Loose gravel, switchbacks, and the occasional avalanche warning make it a slow crawl. At one point, a mule ahead of you refuses to cross a wooden bridge. The driver mutters something about the spirit of the mountain demanding a small snack. The mule is bribed with a handful of dates. Crisis averted. Along the way, the snow carriers rotate their burdens. Every few miles, the satchels are checked. The outer layer of straw is often damp, but the inner snow remains firm. It's amazing, really, ancient refrigeration using nothing but patience and grass clippings. As you descend, you pass a few small shrines carved into the rock. One is painted with what might be a snowflake symbol. Another has melted beeswax candles and a line of small, dried figs. You ask a fellow traveler what they mean. For safety, he says simply. The mountain does not like to give up its cold. You nod, pretending you totally understand mountain diplomacy. By late afternoon, you reach a midway station, a small outpost of stone and clay with high walls and shaded awnings. Here, the snow bundles are transferred to shaded cellars dug into the slope. Some will stay here for local use. Others will be repacked and sent farther on camelback, and yes, camels. You watch as several are led into the yard, grunting and glaring at everyone like sleep-deprived librarians. The snow is lashed onto their saddles, balanced with clay pots of olive oil or pomegranate syrup to disguise the weight and perhaps distract any curious bandits. Because believe it or not, snow was worth stealing. Historians tell of cold wars, pun absolutely intended, between rival cities that tried to intercept or sabotage each other's snow caravans. After all, chilling wine wasn't just classy, it was political. Serving snow-cooled drinks at your banquet sent a message: we have reach. We have power. And yes, we even have snow in July. What do you have? Grapes in a bucket? From this outpost, the cold cargo splits. Some heads to royal courts. Some goes to temples. A small portion, you're told, is reserved for sick children or elderly priests during heat waves. You smile at that. Even in an empire, someone remembered compassion. As evening falls, you sip tea with the caravan master. He's weathered and wiry, with a beard like a wind-tangled scroll. You ask him why he does it. Why risk mountain storms, sore feet, and fussy camels just to deliver snow? He shrugs. Because when the snow arrives, he says, people smile. Simple as that, the stars come out, cold and bright. The snow, tucked into clay cellars, slumbers silently, waiting to dazzle someone's palate. You wrap yourself in a blanket and drift off to sleep beneath the scent of straw and ice. Tomorrow, the snow moves again. Morning arrives not with birdsong, but with the distinct, low groan of a camel standing up reluctantly. You stretch, sore from sleeping on packed earth, and blink through the thin veil of dust that the early breeze kicks up. The snow is already being repacked. Its journey must continue before the heat turns morning into a broiler. You join the caravan as it begins its slow descent toward the lowlands. It's not exactly a stampede. The pace is, well, appropriately sleepy. Each step is calculated, avoiding the kind of terrain that might jostle or shift the snow bundles. The sun rises lazily over the eastern ridges. You can feel it already poking at the clay jars and leather wrappings. Like a child looking for a weak spot in the cookie jar, the snow, like any good introvert, hates attention. It prefers the shaded side of things, the underside of crates, the middle of the bundle, the quiet dark corners of a caravan's load. Every stop is strategic, whether under rock overhangs, beside cold springs, or beneath canopies of tightly woven reeds. Your fingers trail along the side of one snow satchel as you walk beside it. It's damp, but still cool. Not bad, considering this little bundle started its life 2 days ago clinging to a mountain cliff. Historians still puzzle over just how efficient these ancient Persian ice caravans were. Some records suggest snow could be transported over 100 miles with minimal loss. Depending on weather, altitude, and packing technique. Others believe these routes were only used in spring and early summer, when residual mountain snow was still plentiful and road conditions weren't a muddy nightmare. But here you are, on a trail worn into the hills by generations of slow, cold feet. You imagine one of these harvesters returning to his village after weeks of grueling work. His back is bowed, but his face is proud. He didn't just bring home snow. He brought prestige, luxury, and a taste of royal magic. As the caravan descends into warmer air, the workers adjust their loads. Some rotate the outer straw layers. Others sprinkle water on the camel's sides to cool them down, not unlike giving a Formula One car a quick hose-down mid-race. You spot one man whispering to his snow bundle like it's a fragile friend. Not much farther, he mutters. Just hold on. And then, finally, civilization arrives, the gates of a smaller city, far from Persepolis yet still under the empire's sway, come into view. You're greeted by the sight of bright textiles, plumes of cooking smoke, and the buzz of summer commerce. But the snow. It bypasses all of it. There are no parades, no fanfare. It disappears immediately into a side passage, vanishing behind heavy fabric curtains into a low, shaded structure that smells like stone, mint, and cool damp earth. Inside is what looks like an oversized clay oven flipped upside down. But you know better. This is a mini yakshal, a local cold room, smaller than its urban cousins but built on the same principle. Keep it cool. Keep it quiet, and just like that, the snow is home. It will be used for several things. First, for wine, of course. But not just for drinking. Sometimes the snow is used to rapidly cool baked dishes during special feasts, or mixed with rosewater to make a kind of proto-sorbet that probably confused and delighted many a guest. Occasionally, It's melted carefully and offered as a purity drink in religious rituals. Cold water, after all, had to come from somewhere pure. You sit cross-legged near one of the yakshal's interior chambers, running your hand along the inside wall. It's coated in a mixture of sand, ash, lime, and goat hair. These materials are chosen for insulation and breathability. Combined with clever underground drainage and a conical design, this allows it to preserve snow for months, even through brutal Persian summers. You overhear two city stewards discussing the shipment. One frets about the melting rate. The other shrugs and says, "It's enough. The banquet is tonight. The prince will drink cold." You smile at that. There's something oddly satisfying about how unremarkable the delivery seems. After all that effort, all those cliffs and donkeys and whispered snow prayers, it just slips into the schedule like another shipment of figs. There's no applause. No medals, but you know. You saw it. You tasted the altitude in that icy bundle. Historians often focus on battles, treaties, and royal scandals. But quiet logistics like this, the hidden machinery behind luxury, are what real lives were built around. And preserved through. You picture some of these snow porters returning home at dusk, tired and dirty, only to have their kids greet them with wide eyes and muddy feet. "Did you bring any back?" "Just a little." "Can I touch it?" The answer was often yes. Even in an empire, even on a budget, someone always saves a pinch of snow for wonder. Young boy scampers into the room where you're sitting. He doesn't notice you at first. He tiptoes up to one of the clay vessels, opens the lid, and peers inside. Then, as if checking for treasure, he dips 2 fingers in, touches the snow gently, and lets out a soft little chuckle of disbelief. Then he bolts. You stay where you are, smiling to yourself. The snow isn't just cold. It's alive with stories. Each flake is a tiny rebellion against the desert. Each shipment, a memory in motion. You lie back, hands behind your head, eyes tracing the slow rotation of dust in a sunbeam. Outside, the city buzzes. But in here, it's calm. Cool. Timeless. You almost forget the snow ever had to be carried at all. The camels have earned their break. They grunt softly in the shade, flicking their ears and rolling their eyes at each other like veteran coworkers who've seen it all. You, on the other hand, are not done yet. Not by a long shot, because now, the real journey begins. The snow isn't just carried by mountaineers and donkeys. Sometimes it travels hundreds of kilometers, all the way to the empire's beating heart. For that, the Persians used one of their most brilliant creations, the cold caravan. You follow this new convoy as it snakes its way out of the city gates. The sun hangs high and unbothered, a merciless eye in the sky. The roads are dusty veins threading across plains and plateaus. And yet, the snow keeps moving forward. Now it rides inside clay jars. These jars are packed in straw and tucked into the shaded sides of large wooden carts. The carts are fitted with leather awnings and sometimes cooled slightly by hanging water pouches that drip slow streams onto the straw beneath. Primitive but shockingly effective evaporative cooling. No refrigeration units here. Just camel spit, shadow, and stubborn optimism. The caravan leader rides a sturdy white horse and carries what looks like a long wooden baton. It might be ceremonial, or simply for managing particularly dramatic camels. He checks each cart's load at every rest stop. Some carts carry snow. Others transport amphorae of wine, destined to be chilled later. A few carry rosewater and scented oils, the kind nobles dab behind their ears before banquets. You ask how long the trip to Persepolis will take. 3 days, if we don't melt, he says with a straight face, then bursts into laughter. You get the feeling he's made that joke at every campfire since Cyrus the Great was in diapers. Historians still debate whether these long-distance snow shipments were regular or reserved for special occasions. Some suggest there was a seasonal snow schedule, with royal edicts demanding delivery by specific dates. Others think it was more spontaneous, depending on weather, supply, and the changing moods of Persian court life. You stop for the night at a rest station. These aren't inns exactly. More like large shaded courtyards with wells, basic storage, and plenty of gossip. You help unload one cart and notice how clever the packing is. Not just straw, but woven reeds soaked in vinegar to repel pests and reduce heat. Ingenious. Nearby, a merchant traveling the opposite way offers you roasted figs and chilled apricot juice from his own snow bundle. Traded 2 bolts of silk for it, he says, wiping his beard. Best deal I've ever made. My wife almost smiled. You drink. It's not cold, but it's cool enough to make your eyebrows lift. Apricot and snow. Who knew? By firelight, you share a meal with the drivers and handlers. Lamb cooked in clay pots. Flatbread. Something pickled and suspicious. Someone plays a flute. Someone else snores against a bale of straw. Overhead, the stars slowly rotate, ancient and unconcerned. One of the older drivers leans over and says, "Want to know a secret? The snow never really lasts. Not all of it. Half of what we carry disappears on the road." You blink. "Then why do it?" he shrugs. "Because the other half makes it." Simple math. Sacred math. You drift off under a canopy of reeds, thinking about the strange stubbornness of civilizations. How humans will move heaven, earth, and several camels to bring a little chill to their drink. The next morning, the caravan sets off early, long before the sun has fully stretched. The desert is temporarily forgiving. Its heat not yet biting. The carts creak along, raising small clouds of dust with every turn. You pass orchards, terraced hills, villages with sleeping dogs and watchful crows. And always, at the center of it all, the snow. Still cool. Still carefully wrapped. Still resisting the inevitable, you start to feel like part of a quiet brotherhood. The ones who know what a chilled cup means. Who understand that in a world of blistering days and unyielding stone, coolness is power. On the horizon, a smaller caravan comes into view, heading the opposite direction. Their carts are empty, their drivers tired. They nod in recognition. Snow has been delivered. Wine has been poured. Now they return for more. It is a rhythm. A climate-controlled empire. By late afternoon, the stone lions of Persepolis appear ahead. The city unfurls like a golden mirage. Columns. Banners. Smoke curling from feast fires. The guards wave you through. They already know what you're carrying. You're not led to the market or the throne hall. Instead, a discreet side gate opens near the palace kitchens. Inside, more snow cellars await. The drivers begin unloading, gently lifting the jars like infants, checking for cracks, listening for movement. The steward records the arrival. His stylus taps a clay tablet with practiced calm. Name. Contents. Origin. Temperature, judged by touch, of course. Then comes the final moment. One jar is opened. The snow inside, packed and protected for days, rests quietly. Still cool. Still perfect. A cheer rises from the workers. You smile too. You're sunburned, covered in dust, and smell like straw. But you helped snow cross a desert, and all of it, for a single moment, a prince sipping wine at the ideal chill. A noblewoman smiling over a bowl of snow and syrup. A child tasting cold for the first time in midsummer. That's the thing about luxury. Sometimes it melts. Sometimes it fades halfway through. But when it arrives and arrives right, it becomes legend. You wipe your brow. You watch as the last bundle is carried into the cool, quiet vaults. And you wonder, what else would we carry through fire, just to taste a moment of snow? You rise the next morning with a new destination in mind. Not a palace. Not a banquet hall. Something far stranger, almost mythic in its quiet presence. Towering in the distance, shaped like a dome dropped by the gods, stands your next stop, the Yakshul, you first spotted while walking through a sleepy neighborhood on the edge of Persepolis. There it is, looming, pale, serene. It doesn't shout like the city's great halls or glimmer like a noble's robe. It just stands, confident and calm. You squint at it, puzzled. Is that a temple? A silo? A hat that got way out of hand? Nope. It's an ice house. Yakshul, in Persian literally means ice pit. But this is no ordinary pit. It's ancient air conditioning, architectural wizardry, and food preservation rolled into one. You circle it slowly. Its smooth surface catches the early light like marble, though it's made mostly of mud, sand, and a clever paste of lime and ash. Basically the Persian version of miracle insulation. You step closer. The dome rises several stories high, a massive beehive-shaped structure that tapers toward the top. The base is thick, thicker than any pizza crust you've ever seen, and designed to withstand the fiercest desert heat. That little hole at the top is not a design flaw. It is a wind trap. The Yakshul is part of a network. Below it, chambers run deep into the earth. Some are lined with stone. Others are coated in a special waterproof mortar that resists not just heat but also pests and moisture. You descend a narrow passage and instantly feel it, the temperature drop. A cool breath, like stepping into a refrigerator powered by silence. Inside, it's dim and quiet. You blink until your eyes adjust. What you see are stacks. Some are empty. Others still bear the last snow shipment, bundles wrapped in reed mats, packed tightly together. There's no frost. No dramatic puff of cold air. Just stillness. Calm. And that almost sacred sensation of preservation. Historians still marvel at how effective these structures were. Some claim Yakshuls could store ice from winter all the way into midsummer with minimal loss. Others argue it depended on the region, the altitude, and the precision of the builders. But everyone agrees, they worked, and not just for snow. Fruits, dairy, rosewater, even meat. Anything perishable could be kept cool here. These Yakshuls were the Persian Empire's secret superpower. Not flashy. Just quietly essential. You brush your hand against the wall. It's cool to the touch, rough with centuries of whispers and condensation. You imagine workers down here long ago, lighting tiny lamps, checking bundles, humming as they shuffled straw and snow. It feels like a place where time slows. A vault not for gold or scrolls, but for comfort. Then you notice something else. Along the inside of the dome, carved faintly into the dried mud, are names. Dozens of them. Dates too. Some just lines and dots. Graffiti. Inventory records. Or perhaps, gratitude. A prayer in the form of a name. One carving stands out. A short poem, only partly legible. You catch the last line, a summer day, made bearable by shade and snow. You smile. That's the whole point, isn't it? Stepping back into the sun, you find yourself strangely affected. The Yakshul isn't just clever architecture. It's emotional. It reminds you that luxury can be simple. That survival can be elegant. That someone, somewhere, once spent weeks ensuring a stranger would one day sip a cool drink on a hot day. You sit on a nearby stone, watching the breeze flick dust off the dome's edges. From this angle, it looks like an ancient spaceship. Landed and buried. Maybe it is. A vessel for holding time still. Nearby, an elderly man tends to a pomegranate tree. You nod at him and gesture toward the Yakshul. Still used? You ask. He chuckles. Not so much now. We have fridges. Then he adds, but we still keep it. Just in case, just in case. A beautiful phrase. Later that day, you visit a slightly more elaborate yakshal near the royal compound. This one has a kanat system attached, an underground aqueduct channeling mountain meltwater into shallow freezing pools at night. In winter, water from the kanats would flood the surface pools. It would freeze under the cold desert skies, then be cut into blocks and stored below. That's right. Persians didn't just store snow. Sometimes they made ice. It feels like science fiction. Frozen water in a desert, created by manipulating airflow, water depth, and winter temperatures. It's all about heat radiation. Shallow water plus cold air and zero wind equals ice. Genius. You kneel by one of the empty pools. It's cracked with time, but you can still picture it filled with thin sheets of water, stiffening under a January moon. You hear laughter. The ghosts of workers breaking ice at dawn, tossing chunks into waiting carts lined with straw. Historians still debate whether this method could have supplied enough ice for the whole city. Some say it was a backup. Others believe it was part of a dual system, mountain snow and local ice, working together. Either way, it proves the same point. The Persians weren't hoping for cold wine. They planned for it. You finish your tour with a glance up at the yakshal's peak. That narrow vent opens toward the sky. A wind catches it just right and you hear a soft, hollow sound. It's like a flute, or a sigh. The voice of cold air finding its way home. As evening nears, you sit under a fig tree with a borrowed cup of chilled pomegranate wine in hand. You watch the yakshal glow gold in the low light. Its curves cast long, sleepy shadows. No one rushes here. The cold does not sprint. It waits. It endures, and in that patience, the Persians found something close to magic. You're back above ground now, the dome of the yakshal shrinking behind you as the sky deepens into that soft blue that always means the day is quietly preparing to end. But your curiosity's still awake, bouncing really, and there's one question tugging at the sleeve of your mind like a polite child at a grown-up party. How in the world did they figure all this out without electricity, thermometers, or, say, YouTube tutorials? Welcome to the wild, dry world of ancient Persian climate science. Cooling wasn't accidental. It was intentional, methodical, and based on a mix of intuition, observation, and a little architectural flair. Let's start with the basics. You're standing near one of the outer residential districts of the city now, where the houses are lower and quieter, and the courtyards all face north. You squint upward. See that long vertical shaft sticking out of someone's rooftop like a sleepy chimney? That's a badger, a wind catcher. The Persian Empire's version of an air conditioner. These structures were genius. Hot air goes up. Cool air sinks. That's the principle. So badgers were designed to trap wind from one direction and funnel it downward into the home. Meanwhile, hot air inside could escape through other vents. If that sounds like a breathable house, you're getting it. Now here's where it gets delightfully nerdy. Some wind catchers were connected directly to yakshals or cold storage chambers. The air would circulate slowly and steadily, removing heat, pushing cool air down, and creating a natural convection current. You walk past one such structure now, and the temperature shift near the vent is undeniable. It's like nature is sighing through a straw made of mud brick. Historians still debate whether the average home had access to such cooling, or if it was reserved for the wealthy and priestly class. Some suggest that certain city blocks had cooling alleys designed for food storage, linked by shared airflow systems. Others argue it was a bit more improvised. People just hung wet cloths and prayed for wind. As usual, the answer probably lies somewhere between ingenious infrastructure and trial and error with a side of superstition. You step into one modest home and spot it immediately. A series of clay pots are stacked near a small ventilation shaft, the innermost one shimmering slightly with condensation. You ask the woman inside what it's for. She smiles. To cool the dates, she says, as if it's obvious. Inside the pot is a mix of cool water, a few leaves of mint, and yes, soft amber-colored dates, chilled enough to make your fingertips shiver. No freezer. No fuss. Just science and sun management. You munch on one, and your brain hiccups. It tastes like brown sugar and clean air. Let's break down the mechanics a bit more. The yakshul wasn't cool because it had ice. It was cool enough to keep the ice. That's an important distinction. The dome shape, the thick walls, the underground chambers. All of it worked together to trap coolness, reflect sunlight, and minimize thermal gain. It's the architectural equivalent of wearing loose linen in July. Don't fight the heat. Outsmart it, and then there's evaporation. Sweet, glorious evaporation. One of the oldest tricks in the Persian book was the zayir jar. This was an unglazed clay vessel filled with water and placed in a breezy corner. Because the jar breathes, water seeps through the surface and evaporates, pulling heat from the remaining water inside. Boom! Cooler water. No plug required. You spot a courtyard with a large stone basin, centerpiece of a noble household. Inside, shimmering water, lotus leaves, and floating ceramic bowls of fruit bobbing lazily. The breeze hits the water, pulls the heat, and cools the whole area down. One of the household servants tosses a handful of rose petals into the basin, then a few small ice chips from a yakshul cache nearby. As they melt, the fragrance wafts up, mixing with the wind. You lean back on a bench under the shade of a grapevine and breathe it in. That's not just air. That's design. Some Persian scientists, yes, scientists, though we'd call them philosophers or engineers today, actually documented these techniques. One particularly precocious engineer in the Sassanid era reportedly charted optimal dome curvature for ice retention using sand, sticks, and the occasional goat bladder. There's no surviving diagram. But someone mentioned it in a letter to a vizier, so that makes it as good as canon. Historians still argue over who invented these ideas first. Some say the Egyptians had early versions of evaporative cooling. Others argue the Persians perfected it. A few even point to influences from India and Central Asia. But one thing's certain. Persia didn't just build these systems. It integrated them into architecture, into city planning, into daily life. And it's the daily life part that feels most magical. You walk through a small bazaar tucked behind a dusty alley. A vendor offers you a chilled sherbet made of tamarind and mountain snow. You sip it slowly, the sweet tang lingering on your tongue. The chill is a surprise every time. A boy darts past carrying what looks like a small clay pitcher in both hands like a sacred object. You follow him briefly, amused, and find that he's bringing it to a teacher sitting under a tree, reading aloud from a worn scroll. She nods, uncorks the jug, takes a sip, and goes on. Poetry, with snow, you start to feel it now. The rhythm. The logic. Every corner of this society, from the palace to the pottery shop, has been touched by this cooling philosophy. Not to show off. Not to dominate. But simply to make life better. Lighter. More bearable in the furnace of the world, and you wonder how many hot afternoons were made tolerable not with conquest, but with cleverness. Not with steel, but with snow. You stretch, yawn, and let your thoughts melt a little in the breeze. The science is stunning, sure. But what really gets you is the simplicity. It's cooling without chaos. Comfort without carbon footprint. Just a people who paid attention and then built a system to honor what they learned. You finish your date, wipe your hands, and begin walking again. You're heading toward a banquet hall, where the wine's waiting. You already know it'll be cold. The sun has begun its slow slide into the western horizon, turning the stone roads gold and setting the whole city aglow with that soft light that makes even donkey carts look romantic. You're heading somewhere special now, not up another mountain, not down into a cellar, but toward a long, low building that smells like crushed herbs and roasted lamb. Tonight, You're a guest at a Persian banquet. You step into the courtyard and immediately hear the soft clink of goblets, the slow pluck of a lute, and the steady laughter of people who are just full enough to be warm but not yet sleepy. Torches line the perimeter, and petals float in shallow bowls of water, catching flickers of firelight. Somewhere behind a curtain, someone is slicing fruit with the kind of care usually reserved for surgery. You're led to a low, cushioned platform. A servant places a goblet beside you. It's cool. Not cold enough to hurt your teeth, but chilled in that perfect way, like a lake at dawn. You tilt the cup and catch the scent, wine, spiced with cinnamon, cardamom, maybe a whisper of orange peel. There's something else too. Honey, thick and golden. This isn't gulping wine. This is sipping history, and here's the real shock, it tastes good. Smooth. Almost creamy. You half expect it to be sharp or sour, but it's sweet, deep, and utterly calming. You smile into your cup. The Persians didn't just drink wine. They composed it. Like music. Each element in harmony. Historians believe Persian winemaking dates back as far as 5000 BCE, possibly even earlier. By the time of the Achaemenids, wine wasn't just a drink. It was culture, commerce, and sometimes, ceremony. There were vineyards across the empire, from the Zagros to the Caspian Sea. Grapes of every size and hue. Some harvested early for sharpness, others late for sweetness. And don't get started on the additives, dates, resin, saffron, rose petals. If it grew, it probably ended up in a jug at some point. You swirl your cup. The wine catches the light like a jewel. Around you, dishes begin to arrive. Slow, savory platters of lamb stewed with pomegranate molasses, barley pilaf with raisins and herbs, flatbread still warm from clay ovens. You're not just at a meal. You're in the middle of a symphony of textures, scents, and temperatures, and that's where the snow returns, because between courses, servants appear with chilled finger bowls. Small ceramic dishes filled with scented water and, yes, tiny chips of snow. Diners rinse their fingers between bites, cooling their hands, refreshing their senses. One elderly noble dips his fingertips, inhales the scent of rosewater, and closes his eyes like he's tasting time. You try it yourself. The chill travels from your skin to your spine. Not dramatic. Just right. Snow also makes its way into dessert. Naturally. You're handed a shallow bowl of faluda, a kind of early frozen treat made with vermicelli-like noodles, chilled syrup, and lemon juice. It's cold. Sweet. Tangy. You blink. That's basically ice cream's great-great-grandparent. Someone offers you a second portion, this one made with sour cherry juice and snow. You whisper a thank you like it's a prayer, and it doesn't end there. Chilled wine reappears as a palate cleanser, served in smaller cups with a sprig of basil. You overhear two guests debating the merits of mountain snow versus city-made ice. One swears he can taste the altitude. The other calls him a pretentious olive merchant. They toast anyway. Historians still argue whether chilled wine was a status symbol or a standard. Some point to palace records showing snow allocations for regular feasts. Others argue the real ice extravagance was saved for visiting dignitaries and religious ceremonies. But one thing is certain. Cold wine was never just cold wine. It was a message. A message that said, we can conquer heat. We can store the seasons. And we can offer you something extraordinary in a cup. As the evening deepens, you recline slightly, letting the layers of food and drink settle into your bones. Music drifts across the courtyard. Someone plays a piece so slow and gentle it could lull the torches themselves to sleep. A young girl passes by with a tray of tiny goblets, each one holding a different flavor of snow syrup, mint, date, tamarind, violet. You choose the violet. It smells like a garden after rain. You sip slowly. The chill tingles against your palate, then fades into sweetness. And you think, what does it take to make a moment like this? Men who climb mountains. Women who weave straw mats. Architects who build to fight the sun. Philosophers who write poems about ice. Servants who carry snow down winding steps. And the memory keepers, who make sure someone, someday, remembers the taste. You feel full. Not just in the stomach, but in the mind. In the spirit, and as the banquet winds down, you watch as guests are offered damp cloths, wrung from water stored in clay vessels cooled by snow. One by one, they rise, refreshed and glowing. You stay a bit longer, your goblet is empty. But your heart is full. The wine has done its work. Not to intoxicate, but to anchor you here, in this place, in this golden now, and somewhere out in the city. Beneath a dome, snow sleeps. Ready to return, tomorrow, to someone else's waiting hand. The morning after the banquet, you wake slowly. Your limbs heavy, your mind quiet, your mouth faintly tasting of honey and violet. It's the kind of waking that doesn't beg for coffee or alarm bells, just a stretch, a yawn, and the cool memory of wine on your tongue. Today, you walk without purpose. Just wandering. Letting the city happen around you, the streets of Persepolis hum with the casual bustle of daily life. Bakers slap dough into clay ovens, children chase each other through archways, and merchants argue with a kind of rhythm that feels more like music than malice. But here's what catches your attention: everywhere, from noble villa to humble courtyard, snow is at work. In a shaded garden, you find a noblewoman sipping what looks like snow-mixed sherbet from a porcelain bowl, her fingers stained with cherry. In a healer's tent, snow is being mixed with ground herbs and vinegar to cool a feverish boy's forehead. At a potter's stall, someone drops a pinch of snow into a bucket of slip, swirls it, and mutters something about stabilizing the glaze. This isn't a one-time banquet luxury. It's a seasonal shift. A culture of chill. You find yourself once again near the royal quarter, where another, grander feast is being prepared. Not for nobles, but for visiting scholars, poets, and priests. You wander the edges, invited but not expected. The servants know you by now. You're the traveler, the one who followed the snow, and tonight, the snow returns in its most extravagant form yet. As dusk rolls in, long tables are arranged beneath trellised vines. Fireflies blink among the leaves like tiny, curious lanterns. The dishes are smaller, more delicate: cucumber soup chilled with ice shards, rose sorbet molded into petal shapes, wine poured over frozen pomegranate seeds that clink like rubies, but the centerpiece is what truly stuns you. It's a shallow clay bowl, set in the middle of each table. Inside is a perfectly preserved ice sculpture, small and intricate, shaped like a mythical simmered bird, wings outstretched, head tilted as if mid-thought. The sculpture melts slowly over the course of the evening, releasing petals frozen inside, tiny blossoms of violet, saffron, basil. You reach forward and touch it. It's slick, cold, almost imperious. You whisper a thank you. It doesn't reply, but it is a bird made of ice, so you forgive it. Historians still debate whether these elaborate ice sculptures were truly common in the ancient Persian court or a later embellishment from poetic sources. Some scholars cite Babylonian tablets describing forms of ice displayed for gods, while others dismiss these as metaphors. But Persian literature remembers vividly. There are lines about birds of frost at the scribe's feast and roses blooming through crystal skin. You believe it now. Not because a scroll says so, but because your hand just touched it. The scholars at the table debate gently as they eat. Not just about philosophy or astronomy, but about the snow. One insists that the highest quality comes from Mount Sahan. Another claims a southern method of freezing river water was more pure in temperament. A third leans back, laughing, and says, "Snow is snow, unless it's from a liar's lips." You laugh too. Then go back to your wine, now resting in a clay cradle filled with slushy snow. No one rushes. The evening expands like soft fabric in warm water. You look around and realize that this banquet is about something deeper than food or wine. It's about memory, about seasons, about keeping things not just cold, but alive, because snow melts. Always. That's its nature. But for a brief window, it can elevate everything around it. A drink. A moment. A feeling. You think back to the boy with the fever. The noblewoman in her garden. The potter with his snow-touched glaze. This empire doesn't just use snow. It cherishes it. Honors it. Counts on it to mark the turning of the year. Later, as the guests begin to drift away, a small ensemble begins to play. Not court music. Not stately. Just gentle rhythms, plucked strings, the occasional flute trill. You lie back on a cushion, belly full, spirit lulled. A young server places a bowl of chilled melon beside you. You take one bite. It's like eating sunlight remembered from winter. Above you, the stars emerge. Slow. Confident. Inevitable. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you're not in a banquet courtyard. You're in the Zagros Mountains again, the crunch of snow underfoot, a satchel of ice pressing against your back. You're sweating down a mountain trail. You're laughing beside a tired camel. You're watching a child cup snow like it's treasure, and then you're here again, beneath vines, beside scholars, wrapped in the glow of a city that somehow made ice into identity. You open your eyes. The ice bird has lost its head. A few petals drift in the bowl, swirling lazily, and you smile. Not everything must last forever to matter. Some things are precious because they melt. You rise early the next day, woken not by alarm or clamor, but by a quiet truth. Not everyone in the Persian Empire was feasting under vines or sipping sherbet from crystal bowls, so you walk. Away from the palace district. Away from the polished courtyards and humming fountains. Out toward the edge of the city, where the bricks are plainer, the roofs flatter, and the doors hang a little askew. You've come here for a simple reason. To answer a question that's been echoing gently through every chilled goblet and snow-packed cellar you've seen so far. Did anyone else get to taste the cold? The air is already warm, though it's barely dawn. Vendors are setting up stalls. A blacksmith hammers rhythmically in the distance. A woman hauls a bucket from a well, humming a song so old it might predate the bucket itself. You pause by a bakery and chat with the owner, an older man with ash-dusted fingers and a smile that sneaks up on you like sunrise. You ask him, plainly, if he's ever had chilled wine. He shrugs. Once, he says. At my cousin's wedding. Someone knew someone at the palace. We each got a single sip. You nod, but we have our own way, he adds. He gestures to a corner where a clay vessel, half buried in the earth, sits covered by a thick cloth. He lifts the lid. Inside are soaked figs in slightly cool water, spiced with anise and a few tiny ice chips melting at the edges. He grins. The boy who runs errands for the steward sneaks us some snow every few weeks. We give him bread in return. Fair trade. You take a bite. The fig is plump, sweet, and kissed with a chill. Not icy. Not royal. But enough. This is the quiet answer, yes. Snow did trickle down. Historians still debate just how widely snow and chilled luxuries reached the general populace. Some point to accounts of market vendors offering cooled syrups or cold rose drinks in cities like Ecbatana and Susa. Others argue that most peasants never touched snow unless they lived near the mountains. Still others suggest there were public snow storage sites, small community yachtals built and maintained collectively, especially in towns close to trade routes. You visit one such site now. Tucked behind a row of clay houses, shaded by a canopy of dried reeds, sits a miniature yachtshal. It's no more than 2 meters tall, with a single vent and a stone-lined basin beneath it. An older woman sits beside it, hands busily sorting herbs. Does it still work? You ask, she snorts. Of course it does. We're not amateurs. Inside, the air is cooler. The basin holds a few melting chips. Someone stored a jug of tamarind syrup and a handful of cucumbers. You spot a clay bowl with neat markings scratched along the rim, dates and names. Perhaps a record. Perhaps a promise. The woman explains that families take turns maintaining the yakshal, clearing dust from the vent, managing water runoff, packing fresh straw when it arrives from the next town over. It's not for wine, she says. It's for care. You think of that word as you sit beside her. Care. That's what it's all been about, hasn't it? Climbing mountains. Carving domes. Sharing snow. Even when there's only enough to cool a single bowl of fruit, people pass it along. Later that day, you find yourself at the city's main fountain. Not the grand one. This one's smaller, lined with moss and worn stone. Humming softly beneath a plane tree. Children run past, shrieking joyfully, splashing water with their feet. One boy clutches a ball of snow in his hands like a stolen moon. Where did he get it? Doesn't matter. It's already melting. He holds it high, then tosses it into the fountain with a triumphant laugh. It hits the water with a plop and vanishes instantly. No one cares. That's not the point. The point is that for a few minutes, that child held winter in his palms. You sit on the fountain's edge and sip from a cup offered by a passing vendor. It's cool barley water, served with a sprig of mint, snow. You ask, he grins. Second hand. He means melted snow from the palace, funneled into the communal cistern. Even runoff is precious. You lean back and close your eyes. It's different here, less about extravagance, more about resourcefulness. And maybe joy. The rich had banquets. The poor had borrowed snow. But both, in their own way, experienced the same thing. The relief of coolness in a world that often scorched. One more stop before the sun climbs too high. You visit a school. Not a royal academy. Just a small courtyard where a teacher reads aloud to a circle of squirming kids. On a low table beside her sits a shallow tray, lined with clay marbles. Nestled in the middle is a single chunk of snow, carefully preserved, melting slow and steady. Each morning, she says, we place a snow piece here. Whoever reads best today gets to hold it. The children stare like it's a crown. It is. You leave before the lesson ends. The streets are louder now, the heat swelling. But your steps are light, because now you know, the snow wasn't just for kings, it was for anyone with the patience to share it, the hands to hold it, and the heart to see that a few cool moments could mean everything. You're back near the edge of the city again. This time not for a fig or a cup of barley water, but for something a little more secretive. A young man you met at the yakshal, a steward's apprentice with a mischievous grin and a nose perpetually sunburned, has invited you to a place few outsiders get to see. He calls it the Cold Chain's Shadow Route. If that doesn't sound intriguing, you clearly haven't been walking through deserts trying to follow snow. He leads you through an unmarked alley, across a dried canal, then down into what looks like a warehouse. Inside, it's quiet, cool, and meticulously organized. Rows of clay jars. Pallets of straw-wrapped bundles. Small flags with strange insignias. You've just entered the logistical underbelly of ancient Persia's snow distribution system. The backstage of the banquet. The hidden veins of cold that stretch like secret rivers from the mountains to the mouths of kings. This is where the real work happens, the apprentice explains as he walks, half whispering, half bragging. We don't just carry snow, he says. We track it. Protect it. Redirect it when enemies move. Wait. Enemies? Oh yes. Welcome to the political side of the snow story. Historians still argue just how critical snow was to Persia's military and diplomatic machinery. Some say it was merely ceremonial, used in treaties, banquets, and rituals to impress foreign dignitaries. Others suggest snow was considered a symbol of control, and that denying it to certain regions or cities was a form of soft punishment. Then there's the theory you're standing in the middle of, that snow routes were guarded, encrypted, and even used for intelligence, because think about it. If your enemy's wine is warm at a summit meeting, and yours is chilled to perfection, that says something. Not just I have better taste, but I have reach. I have loyal men in the mountains. I have cold where others burn. Your guide pulls back a cloth curtain to reveal a long wall etched with names and symbols. Snowdrop points, according to him. One looks suspiciously close to a Greek-held border town. You raise an eyebrow. Sometimes, he says, we drop decoys. Let them chase a snow caravan while the real one slips south. You imagine a group of Greek scouts, sweating through their tunics, tailing a caravan they believe holds something valuable. Wine, perhaps. Or messages. Only to find bundles of nothing but damp straw and goat fur. Persian prank levels, elite, but this wasn't all fun and games. In times of war, some records suggest snow was rationed not just for luxury, but for medicine. Fevered commanders. Dehydrated troops. Snow in clay vessels, packed tight, moved swiftly, guarded with the same vigilance as gold. Not a lot, but enough to turn the tide of morale. You move deeper into the warehouse. It narrows, turns, and opens into a darker chamber. There, in the center, rests a locked chest. Not gilded. Not flashy. Just heavy, reinforced, and watched by a man who's clearly not in the mood for small talk. What's in there? You ask, the apprentice shrugs. Could be scrolls. Could be pomegranate wine for the high priest. Could be mountain snow with saffron shavings. He leans in. I've never seen it open. You don't push your luck, instead, you're taken to the message corridor. A hallway lined with storage vessels, each marked not with contents but with destinations. Some are standard, like royal kitchens and ceremonial halls. Others are coded. One reads simply Cloud Dog. The apprentice taps that one and says, don't ask. I don't know either. What you do know is this, snow moved like secrets. You picture a young courier galloping across the plains with a single snow-stuffed jar strapped to his saddle. Somewhere, someone waits for it. Not just for the chill, but for the message it carries. That the system still works. That the world is still turning. That the empire is intact. You sit beside a row of marked vessels, watching workers shuffle between bundles, checking seals, repairing satchels. No one raises their voice. It's all deliberate, quiet, clockwork. The hum of coordination, and in the center of it all is trust, because you don't chase snow across deserts without trusting the man before you did the packing right, and the man after you will get there on time. You don't cool the wine of kings without someone guarding the cellar while you sleep. You don't carry the frost of a mountain into a banquet unless every hand in the chain honors its purpose. It's not just infrastructure. It's a culture of reliability. A devotion to cold, and to what cold means. You're guided out a side exit just as the sun hits its peak. Outside, it's hot. No surprise there. But you carry with you the chill of that warehouse. The quiet dignity of a supply line built not for conquest, but for consistency. As you walk away, the apprentice calls after you. Next time, he says, I'll show you the shrine. Shrine? You turn, curious, he grins. Some folks believe the first snow ever harvested never melted. That it's still somewhere. Sleeping. Waiting. You laugh. Maybe. Maybe not, but you hope it is, because somewhere, deep in the bones of this desert, you believe there's a flake of snow that remembers everything. You're back near the edge of the city again. This time not for a fig or a cup of barley water, but for something a little more secretive. A young man you met at the Yakshal, a steward's apprentice with a mischievous grin and a nose perpetually sunburned, has invited you to a place few outsiders get to see. He calls it the Cold Chain's Shadow Route. If that doesn't sound intriguing, you clearly haven't been walking through deserts trying to follow snow. He leads you through an unmarked alley, across a dried canal, then down into what looks like a warehouse. Inside, it's quiet, cool, and meticulously organized. Rows of clay jars. Pallets of straw-wrapped bundles. Small flags with strange insignias. You've just entered the logistical underbelly of ancient Persia's snow distribution system. It is the backstage of the banquet, the hidden veins of cold that stretch like secret rivers from the mountains to the mouths of kings. This is where the real work happens, the apprentice explains as he walks, half whispering, half bragging. We don't just carry snow, he says. We track it. Protect it. Redirect it when enemies move. Wait. Enemies? Oh yes. Welcome to the political side of the snow story. Historians still argue just how critical snow was to Persia's military and diplomatic machinery. Some say it was merely ceremonial, used in treaties, banquets, and rituals to impress foreign dignitaries. Others suggest snow was a symbol of control, and that denying it to certain regions or cities served as a form of soft punishment. And then there's the theory you're standing in the middle of. Snow routes were guarded, encrypted, and even used for intelligence. Think about it. If your enemy's wine is warm at a summit meeting while yours is chilled to perfection, that says something. Not just I have better taste, but I have reach. I have loyal men in the mountains. I have cold where others burn. Your guide pulls back a cloth curtain to reveal a long wall etched with names and symbols. These are snowdrop points, according to him. One looks suspiciously close to a Greek-held border town. You raise an eyebrow. Sometimes, he says, we drop decoys. Let them chase a snow caravan while the real one slips south. You imagine a group of Greek scouts sweating through their tunics, tailing a caravan they believe holds something valuable. Wine, perhaps, or messages. Only to find bundles of nothing but damp straw and goat fur. Persian prank levels, elite, but this wasn't all fun and games. In times of war, some records suggest snow was rationed not just for luxury, but for medicine. Fevered commanders. Dehydrated troops. Snow in clay vessels, packed tight, moved swiftly, guarded with the same vigilance as gold. Not a lot. But enough to turn the tide of morale. You move deeper into the warehouse. It narrows, turns, then opens into a darker chamber. There, in the center, rests a locked chest. Not gilded. Not flashy. Just heavy, reinforced, and watched by a man clearly not in the mood for small talk. What's in there? You ask, the apprentice shrugs. Could be scrolls. Could be pomegranate wine for the high priest. Could be mountain snow with saffron shavings. He leans in. I've never seen it open. You don't push your luck, instead, you're taken to the message corridor. A hallway lined with storage vessels, each marked not with contents, but with destinations. Some are standard like royal kitchens or ceremonial halls. Others are coded. One reads simply Cloud Dog. The apprentice taps that one and says, don't ask. I don't know either. What you do know is this. Snow moved like secrets. You picture a young courier galloping across the plains with a single snow-stuffed jar strapped to his saddle. Somewhere, someone waits for it. Not just for the chill, but for the message it carries. That the system still works. That the world is still turning. That the empire is intact. You sit beside a row of marked vessels, watching workers shuffle between bundles, checking seals, repairing satchels. No one raises their voice. It's all deliberate, quiet, clockwork. The hum of coordination, and in the center of it all is trust. because you don't chase snow across deserts without trusting the man before you did the packing right, and the man after you will get there on time. You don't cool the wine of kings without someone guarding the cellar while you sleep. You don't carry the frost of a mountain into a banquet unless every hand in the chain honors its purpose. It's not just infrastructure. It's a culture of reliability. A devotion to cold, and to what cold means. You're guided out a side exit just as the sun hits its peak. Outside, it's hot. No surprise there. But you carry with you the chill of that warehouse. The quiet dignity of a supply line built not for conquest, but for consistency. As you walk away, the apprentice calls after you. Next time, he says, I'll show you the shrine. Shrine, you turn, curious, he grins. Some folks believe the first snow ever harvested never melted. That it's still somewhere. Sleeping. Waiting. You laugh. Maybe. Maybe not, but you hope it is, because somewhere, deep in the bones of this desert, you believe there's a flake of snow that remembers everything. You picture a young courier galloping across the plains with a single snow-stuffed jar strapped to his saddle. Somewhere, someone waits for it. Not just for the chill, but for the message it carries. That the system still works. That the world is still turning. That the empire is intact. You sit beside a row of marked vessels, watching workers shuffle between bundles, checking seals, repairing satchels. No one raises their voice. It's all deliberate, quiet, clockwork. The hum of coordination, and in the center of it all is trust, because you don't chase snow across deserts without trusting the man before you did the packing right, and the man after you will get there on time. You don't cool the wine of kings without someone guarding the cellar while you sleep. You don't carry the frost of a mountain into a banquet unless every hand in the chain honors its purpose. It's not just infrastructure. It's a culture of reliability. A devotion to cold, and to what cold means. You're guided out a side exit just as the sun hits its peak. Outside, it's hot. No surprise there. But you carry with you the chill of that warehouse. The quiet dignity of a supply line built not for conquest, but for consistency. As you walk away, the apprentice calls after you. Next time, he says, I'll show you the shrine. Shrine, you turn, curious, he grins. Some folks believe the first snow ever harvested never melted. That it's still somewhere. Sleeping. Waiting. You laugh. Maybe. Maybe not, but you hope it is, because somewhere, deep in the bones of this desert, you believe there's a flake of snow that remembers everything. You picture it, a Persian merchant sharing fig wine with a Chinese herbalist. One draws a dome in the sand. The other draws a lattice of underground tunnels. They nod. They sip. They both pretend to understand each other. And together, they imagine a better freezer. The Silk Roads didn't just carry spices and silk. They carried the logic of cool, and they weren't the only ones. From the north, snow handling techniques merged with knowledge from the Scythians and other steppe peoples. These groups, though more mobile, knew how to preserve food with earth pits and snow-covered caches. Meanwhile, down south, traders from India brought cooling herbs, clay vessel techniques, and even early sugar syrups used in snow drinks. Eventually, something incredible happened. You reached the outskirts of an old caravanserai. It's half buried in sand but still standing, like a tired man who refuses to sit. Inside, you find faded murals. Lions. Horses. And what appears to be a bowl of snow, handed from one man to another beneath a silk canopy. Even here, miles from any glacier, you find the echo. Persian ice didn't stay in Persia. It wandered. Adapted. Evolved. In Damascus, you read about sarouj, a waterproof, insulating mortar almost identical to the mix used in yakshuls. In Cairo, medieval texts describe ice pools that mirror Persian ice-making techniques, down to the reed shading and night freezing rituals. Later, In Andalusia, Moorish Spain, scholars translated ancient Persian texts on water management and cooling structures. Even the Alhambra, with its shaded courtyards and whispering fountains, feels like a descendant of the same philosophy: control the space, guide the air, store the cool. The knowledge crept westward too. It eventually influenced European icehouses during the Renaissance. By the time Versailles got its own ice vaults, the idea had become fashionable. But the seed was planted long ago. Beneath a Persian dome, you pause at a merchant's campfire, where a traveler from Samarkand shares stories of his grandfather's garden. It was filled with clay channels of water, snowmelt reservoirs, and a cellar that stayed cool even in midsummer. It's all old magic, he says, chewing a date. Passed down. Forgotten. Then remembered again. You nod, because that's the pattern. Knowledge is like snow. It melts in some places, then reappears in others. It vanishes. Not because it was weak, but because it was seasonal. Waiting for the right time, the right climate, the right mind to bring it back, and now, in your century, you realize something. We didn't invent refrigeration. We just gave it a power cord, but the idea, the desire to save snow, to preserve cold, to bend the environment gently into submission, that's ancient. That's Persian. That's human. You close your eyes and imagine it again, a caravan crossing a desert under starlight. A yakshul standing like a quiet prophet beneath the sun. A clay goblet, lifted to cracked lips, offering the miracle of kolf, a word that doesn't exist, but should. The snow may melt. But the wisdom? That travels. By now, the story has settled into your bones. You've climbed the mountains, traveled with the snow, stood in the chill of ancient domes and tasted wine colder than logic. But as you stroll through the dusty outskirts of what was once Persepolis, you feel a shift in the air. Not temperature, but tone, because every empire cools, every system, no matter how clever, eventually starts to crack. You pass what used to be a minor yakshul, now partially collapsed. The top vent has caved in, its once smooth walls faded to a brittle beige. A child plays nearby, kicking stones against its base like it's just another ruin. No snow is stored here. No rituals. Just silence and wind. You've reached the long, slow decline. Historians differ on when exactly Persia's cold culture began to melt away. Some point to the Macedonian conquest, with Alexander the Great sweeping through the empire in 330 BCE like a very ambitious gust of wind. While he admired much of Persian engineering, his armies brought with them new customs, new centers of power, and a sharp disinterest in the delicate logistics of snow. Others say the shift was slower, more organic. As the Seleucid Empire took hold, followed by the Parthians, the old systems, mountain routes, ice-making pools, the ceremonial use of snow, began to fade from priority. Banquets were still held, sure. Wine was still poured. But the snow? Less revered. Less guarded, less understood. You stand before a crumbling outpost where snow caravans once paused to rest. The stone troughs are now flower beds. A goat blinks at you, unimpressed. Further on, you come across a broken clay pipe that once channeled meltwater from a canet into freezing basins. Now it's dry, choked with weeds. The village nearby uses metal jugs and chilled wells. Efficient. Practical. But not poetic. That's the key, isn't it? Snow became practical, not magical, as centuries passed and dynasties shifted, from Sassanids to Arabs, Arabs to Seljuks, Seljuks to Safavids. The emphasis changed. Innovation didn't stop. In fact, many systems improved. But the reverence for snow as a ritual, as a luxury, began to fade. One scholar writes of a drifting away of elegance. Another, more bluntly, calls it the ice age of Persian indulgence melting under foreign rule. Still, some things persisted. Even as court records stopped mentioning snow inventories, village yakshuls were still quietly maintained. Straw was still packed in winter. Mountain paths were still trodden, not by royal decree but by habit. By memory. By love of cool things. You meet a man near the ruins of an old administrative hall. He's tending bees, bright clay hives lined in perfect rows. My grandfather used to say, he tells you, that cold honey tasted like truth. Then he hands you a chunk of comb wrapped in a fig leaf. It's not cold. But it's sweet enough to matter. There's a moment later that stays with you. You wander into a half-abandoned village built near a dried-up canot. In the center is what looks like a makeshift yakshal, patched with modern cement. Its dome is warped but still standing. Inside, a boy sits beside a bowl of fruit, pomegranates, cucumbers, lemons, and he's fanning them with a plastic dinner tray. You raise an eyebrow, he grins. Grandmother says the wind here used to be enough. You nod. He offers you a slice of melon, warmed by the day but still juicy. You eat it slowly. That's the thing with decline. It doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes it just means transformation. What was once sacred becomes normal. What was once magical becomes habit. And habits, they leave fingerprints. In hidden corners of modern Iran, yakshals still rise. Some restored, some crumbling. You can find them in Yazd, Kerman, Kashan. They stand like time capsules, whispering their cold truth into a world that mostly forgot how to listen, and even if snow is no longer carried by camel and pole, the spirit remains, in every shaded courtyard, in every chilled sherbet sold on a Tehran street, in every pot of water left out at night to cool, in every soft smile of someone sipping cold during the heat of the day. The empire melted. But the memory lingers, like frost on your fingertips. You take a quiet road out of the ruins, following no guide this time. Just the pull of a thought, soft as a breeze off the mountain snow. Does any of it still live? The city behind you fades into dust and distance. But ahead, beyond the farms, the new towns, the solar panels and motorbikes, you begin to see them, shapes. Domes. Echoes, rising like grounded moons in the scrub of the Iranian plateau are the remnants, and sometimes, the rebirth of the ancient yakshals. Some are collapsed. Others half swallowed by sand. But a few. A precious few. Still stand tall. One such structure greets you outside a village near Kerman. It's pristine. Recently restored. Painted the color of old snow and lined with lime-washed bricks that gleam under the sun. And what's more surprising, it's being used. You arrive just as a group of volunteers are packing ice into its basin. They're not dressed like ancient workers. They wear jeans and bald caps and have smartphones in their back pockets. But the technique, the layering of straw, the packing rhythm, it's the same. A dance passed down. One woman hands you a chipped clay cup. Mint water, she says. From last night's freeze. You sip. Cool. Earthy. Familiar. She tells you that local farmers here revived the yakshal after an especially brutal summer, when electricity costs soared and refrigerators failed under heatwave stress. We thought, she shrugs, why not do it the old way? And the old way worked. They rebuilt the dome using ancient blueprints, consulted local elders, even brought in craftsmen who remembered working on their grandfather's domes. The result, a functioning yakshal, storing snow collected from a nearby peak and ice made in shallow, night-frozen pools. Historians would weep with joy. Or confusion. Possibly both, because this isn't nostalgia. It's not a museum piece. It's practical magic, reborn. You walk inside. The same scent greets you, straw, dust, stone, and that faint, mineral trace of cold. The basin glows with packed ice. Someone's storing pickled turnips beside it. Another bundle has hand-scrawled Persian script, reading, wedding sweets, keep cool, it's alive again, and it's not alone. Your journey continues, hopping from one town to the next. Yazd, Mabad, Nain. Each with its own version of ancient chill. Some yakshals are integrated into parks. Others sit proudly in public squares, their functions explained with placards and QR codes. One even has a school program where kids learn how to build miniature ones. Imagine it, a 10-year-old explaining thermal insulation while sprinkling straw over a snowball in a dome he built with classmates. Somewhere, a Persian engineer from 400 BCE is smiling smugly in the afterlife. But it's not just domes. You visit homes that use clay jars hung in wind tunnels, updated with modern mesh to keep bugs out. Bakeries that chill dough in cellars still lined with sarouj mortar. A cafe in Isfahan serves faluda the old way, poured over snow packed in from a storage dome behind the shop. The ice is delivered by motorbike and harvested by hand. You sit at a table, watching young couples take selfies with their violet syrup bowls, the snow steaming faintly in the heat. They don't know the whole story. But they're eating it, and that's enough. You end your day at a rooftop in Shiraz, the wind warm, the sky painted with 1,000 soft pinks. Someone offers you a drink, a twist on Persian wine, non-alcoholic, sweetened with pomegranate and rose, poured over a slush of snow shaved from a brick harvested last winter. You take a sip, cool, gentle, unapologetically ancient, and you realize, the snow was never the point, the effort was, the climb. The craft. The patience. The willingness to store a fleeting thing for the sake of joy, and that spirit, still here, in schoolyards and cafes. In wedding sweets and herbal drinks. In the memory of clay domes and the hands that still patch their curves, year after year. The empire is gone, but the coolness lives. You return, at last, to the place where it all began, not in time, but in spirit. A quiet hill overlooking what remains of Persepolis. From here, you can see the carved stone pillars reaching like broken ribs into the sky, the scattered shadows of what was once the pulse of an empire. But more than that, you see the patterns. The roads. The domes. The invisible thread that connected ice to empire, snow to soul, and here's the truth you've gathered, like snowflakes cupped gently in your hands across every mile of this journey. It wasn't just about staying cool, it was about control, about care, about devotion. You sit in the soft dust of the hillside and remember the people, named and unnamed, who made the miracle of cold possible. The mountaineers who packed snow at midnight under a silver moon. The caravanners who memorized every dune and every shade. The architects who calculated airflow like poets measure meter. The bakers and the brewers, the nobles and the servants. The children who stared in awe at a melting flake in their palm. Historians still argue over so many things, dates, designs, dynasties, but they all agree on this. Persia knew how to make cold into something sacred, and they weren't alone. From Persia, the idea flowed outward, touched kingdoms, curled into other continents like vines. But here it was born. Not of ice, but of imagination. You stretch your legs out into the dust and think of everything that had to go right for you to be here, sipping snow-laced pomegranate, walking dome-shadowed alleys, running your hands along bricks smoothed by the same wind that once whispered over 1,000 amphorae. It humbles you, because the snow always melts, the yakshals crumble, the goblets chip, but the feeling, that flicker of joy when the cup touches your lips and the heat breaks for just one glorious moment, that never fades. So you stand, not to leave, but to mark the ending. Not of cold, but of this particular story, and before you go, you press your hand into the sand and let it hold your shape for a moment. A soft signature. A thank you. You turn toward the breeze. It smells like history and mint, and as you walk down the hill, you don't look back, because the cold is no longer behind you, it's with you. Always, now, before you drift off completely, let's slow everything down, let the story settle in your body like soft snow melting into warm earth. Let each image, of mountain paths, shadowed domes, and chilled clay goblets, drift gently through your thoughts like fog curling over a sleeping valley. There's no need to hold on to the details now. Let the facts fade. Let the names and places blur softly at the edges. What remains is the feeling of effort turned into comfort, of something fleeting made to last, of a world that once carried snow on the backs of camels, across deserts, just to cool a single drink. Breathe in slowly, as if sipping air from an ancient goblet. Breathe out even slower, letting your thoughts quiet like footsteps in a cold corridor. You're safe now. Still. At rest, imagine yourself beneath a dome, the walls thick with time, the air cool and still. Outside, the heat may blaze. The world may hurry, but in here, everything holds its shape. Nothing melts too quickly. And you are part of that stillness, so close your eyes. Let the warmth of your blanket meet the cool of remembered snow. Let the hum of the world fade like the last whisper of a snow caravan passing in the night, and when you dream, may you walk shaded paths, may your hands find chilled stone, may your heart be light and your cup, always full. Good night, traveler.